You ever have those moments where it feels like nothing is happening, like you're praying, believing, pushing, and the ground isn't moving an inch? Yeah, I've been there too. But what if I told you that the silence wasn't the absence of movement, it was the buildup? What if I told you that while you've been waiting, God's been working behind the scenes, aligning things, shifting things, timing things? See, we keep looking for progress in pieces, but God specializes in suddenlies. He doesn't just add blessings one at a time. No, He multiplies, He accelerates, He reveals. And when it's time, it won't be little by little, it'll be all at once. Somebody say all at once. You've been sowing in tears, but you're about to reap in overflow. Everything you've been praying for, crying for, grinding for, it's not just coming, it's about to appear. And it's not coming in pieces, it's coming in power. You ready? Let's go. We live in a world that celebrates instant results. We want fast answers, quick turnarounds, immediate breakthroughs. We've been conditioned to believe that if it doesn't happen now, it's not happening at all. But faith doesn't operate on our timeline. It operates on trust. Trust that even when nothing seems to be shifting, something is still being shaped. Delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean God isn't doing it. Sometimes we confuse God's patience with His absence. We pray, we fast, we declare, and when nothing moves, we start to question, God, did you hear me? God, do you care? God, did I miss it? But God isn't ignoring you. He's orchestrating something that requires more than what your eyes can perceive. It's like a seed planted deep underground. Just because it's buried doesn't mean it's dead. Just because you don't see the sprout doesn't mean the root isn't growing. In fact, the deeper the root, the stronger the tree. And some of us have been wondering why it's taken so long, but God's been building something strong enough to carry the weight of the blessing. See, the delay is where God does His deepest work. Not in the stage, not in the spotlight, but in the shadow. That season where you feel overlooked, that's training ground. That space where you feel left behind, that's preparation. That relationship that ended, the opportunity that slipped through your fingers, the job that didn't work out. What if it wasn't a rejection, but a redirection? What if God was pulling you out of the wrong room to place you in the right one? What if the delay was Him protecting you from something you didn't even know you needed to be protected from? We think in terms of linear progress, but God thinks in terms of divine timing. And divine timing doesn't operate on convenience, it operates on purpose. You might be in a waiting season right now and it feels like everyone else is passing you by, but comparison will always kill confidence. Don't judge your seed based on someone else's harvest. You don't know what they had to go through. You don't know what they're still carrying. And you don't know what God is still preparing in you. Because if God gave it to you too soon, it could crush you. But if He gives it to you in season, it will elevate you. That's why the wait is holy. That's why the delay is divine. And I know it's frustrating. I know it feels like you're doing everything right. You're praying, you're staying faithful, you're showing up, and still nothing's breaking open. But faith isn't proven in the answer, it's proven in the absence of one. Do you still believe when nothing changes? Do you still show up when you're tired of trying? Do you still worship when the miracle hasn't come? That's where real trust is born, not in the celebration, but in the silence. The silence is a test. It's where motives get revealed. It's where strength gets forged. It's where God asks, do you trust me or do you just trust my results? Because everybody loves a blessing, but not everyone loves the process that comes before it. We want resurrection, but we skip right past the cross. But there is no crown without a cross, no breakthrough without brokenness, no promise without a process. And it's in that process, in the quiet, in the wait, in the delay, that God does His most intentional work. Some of you have been feeling like your prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling. But what if I told you that heaven is not ignoring you? It's just preparing a response that's bigger than you asked for. What if the delay isn't about God holding back? It's about Him holding together what's about to be released. Sometimes God doesn't answer right away because he's protecting you from premature exposure. Sometimes he delays the blessing because he's waiting for your character to match your calling. He's more concerned with who you're becoming than what you're receiving. And that means he loves you too much to rush it. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had dreams of leadership, visions of influence, and then he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. 13 years of delay, 13 years of wondering, God, where are you? But in that delay, God was developing him, teaching him wisdom, giving him favor in places that didn't look like promotion. And when the time came, Joseph didn't just receive a blessing, he stepped into a purpose that was bigger than the dream he originally had. Because the delay refined the dream. The delay purified his heart. And when it was time, it didn't just happen gradually, it happened suddenly, overnight, all at once. You might not be in a prison, but maybe you're in a pit of discouragement, a place that doesn't reflect the promise God spoke over your life. And you're tempted to think it's over. But I came to tell you that this delay is not the end. It's a setup. You're in the middle of your becoming. Don't abandon the process just because it's uncomfortable. Don't mistake the cocoon for a coffin. The caterpillar might feel confined, isolated, and forgotten, but inside the cocoon, transformation is happening. Wings are forming, and when the time is right, the breakthrough is not gradual, it's instant. That's what God is doing in you, quietly, faithfully, deliberately. Every delay has a design. Every pause has a purpose. God doesn't waste time, and he definitely doesn't waste pain. The longer it's taking, the more significant it's becoming. And when you come out of this, you won't come out empty. You'll come out equipped, stronger, wiser, ready to carry what you once could only dream about. But you have to trust him in the delay, because the delay is not a sign that God has forgotten. It's a sign that he's preparing you for more. And let's be honest, some of the things we're praying for require a version of us we haven't even grown into yet. You're asking God for influence, but can you handle the criticism that comes with it? You're asking him for opportunity, but are you prepared for the responsibility that tags along? You're praying for expansion, but do you have the discipline to steward it? That's what the delay is for, to grow you, to strengthen you, to prepare you, because when it comes, it's going to come fast, and when it hits, it's going to be big. You won't have time to learn how to handle it then. You need to learn now, in the silence, in the waiting, in the space that feels forgotten but is actually foundational. That's the God we serve. A God who sees beyond what we want and gives us what we're ready for. A God who loves us enough to say not yet, not because he's withholding, but because he's preparing. So if you're in a delay, don't lose hope. Don't misinterpret it. Don't let the enemy lie to you and say it's over. No, this is where the story is getting good. This is where faith becomes sight, not because you see the answer, but because you choose to believe anyway, because you know deep down that the delay is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of something greater than you imagined. There's something powerful that happens when God moves, but there's something even more shocking about how he moves. We expect a buildup. We expect steps. We expect him to drop one blessing, then another, then a little more. We expect a slow, manageable unfolding of what we've been praying for. But God doesn't always work in increments. Sometimes God doesn't reveal progress in small pieces. He reveals it in sudden shifts. When it happens, it's not step by step. It's not logical. It's not calculated. It's sudden. It's supernatural. It's all at once. We've been trained to believe that growth comes in a straight line, that success has a sequence, that promotion follows protocol. But God isn't bound by process. He's not limited by our timelines. And when he moves, it often violates our expectations. Think about it. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep. Just an ordinary life, day in, day out. And then one day a bush catches fire. And in an instant, his entire destiny shifts. A moment, a conversation, a command. All at once, he goes from shepherd to deliverer. Not because he climbed some spiritual ladder, but because God showed up and interrupted the ordinary with something extraordinary. Some of you have been waiting so long that you've gotten used to the wait. You've stopped looking for suddenlies. You've trained yourself to lower your expectations just to survive the silence. But what if God is about to do something in your life that skips the process entirely? What if what you've been praying for isn't going to come in drops, but in a downpour? Because that's the God we serve. A God of suddenly, a God of overflow, a God who can compress 10 years of progress into a moment of favor. And when it happens, you'll know it wasn't you. That's the thing about a supernatural. Suddenly, it breaks every formula. It doesn't follow your plan. It doesn't align with your resume. It doesn't consult your credentials. It bypasses what you thought you had to earn, and it delivers what only grace could provide. Suddenly doesn't mean chaos. It means divine acceleration. It means that God doesn't need time to bless you. He just needs a moment where heaven meets earth and destiny collides with obedience. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. 12 years of suffering, 12 years of being overlooked, outcast, isolated. She spent everything she had on solutions that didn't work. And then suddenly Jesus walks by. No warning, no announcement, no invitation, just a moment. And she says, if I could just touch the hem of his garment. That one moment, that one desperate act shifted 12 years of brokenness. It didn't take a long conversation. It didn't require a process. It happened instantly, all at once. Healing flooded her body and restoration entered her life. God specializes in moments like that, where you've been stuck for so long that you can't even imagine being free, and then in a breath, the chains break, the doors open. The thing you thought would take years suddenly comes together in a way you can't explain, because the supernatural doesn't wait for your plan to catch up. It overrides it. God is not asking for your logic. He's asking for your faith. Faith to believe that he can do it in a moment. Faith to expect the unexpected. Faith to prepare for something that hasn't even shown up yet. And that's what makes suddenly so hard to accept, because they require you to be ready without any visible reason to get ready. You've been walking around barren ground and God says, dig ditches. You've been walking in silence and God says, start shouting. You've been walking around a wall and God says, blow the trumpet. None of it makes sense until it happens. Until water fills the ditches, until the shout breaks the silence, until the wall comes down. All at once, not one step at a time, not with warning signs or indicators, just bam, shift. So often we're looking for signs, but God is looking for surrender. He's looking for the ones who will stay faithful in the silence, who will prepare for rain when the sky is still dry, because when it comes, there won't be time to get ready. You'll have to be ready. And that's where the tension is, because preparation in the absence of progress feels foolish, but faith always looks foolish until it works, until the floodgates open. Until the door swings wide, until the blessing hits and you realize, I wasn't waiting in vain. I was waiting in alignment. God is a multiplier, not an additionist. When he moves, it's not in portions, it's in overflow. Look at Peter. One moment, he's fishing all night and catching nothing. The next, Jesus steps onto his boat, gives one instruction, cast your net again. And suddenly, the net breaks with abundance. Same boat, same sea, same net. Different outcome because of who stepped in. It didn't make sense. It didn't follow the rules, but it happened. Not gradually, instantly. And that's how the presence of Jesus shifts everything. It turns the mundane into miraculous. It transforms lack into overflow. Not because of your strength, but because of his word. And if God did it for Peter, if he did it for Joseph, if he did it for that woman, he can do it for you. But you have to stop expecting him to move like man moves. People will give you breadcrumbs, but God gives you the bakery. People will give you advice, but God gives you answers. And when he shows up, he shows out. So don't let the current pace of your life convince you that this is all there is. Don't let the silence fool you. God is not slow, he's strategic. And when it's time, it won't be incremental, it'll be immediate. Sometimes the reason it hasn't happened yet is because it's not coming piece by piece. It's coming in one divine package. And he's been aligning things behind the scenes so that when it shows up, it all fits. The relationships, the opportunities, the healing, the clarity, the resources. It's not being delayed, it's being assembled. It's not late, it's being layered. Because when it lands, it has to land whole, and you don't want to interrupt the masterpiece because you're tired of waiting in the sketch phase. Let him finish the picture. Let him do it right. And maybe you've already tried to piece it together yourself. Maybe you've tried to force something to work because the silence scared you, but now you're tired. You're worn out. And God's saying, let me do it my way. Because when I do it, it's going to come without sorrow, without confusion, without compromise. It will be complete. That's what all at once looks like. It's not just fast, it's full. It comes with peace, it comes with purpose, it comes with provision. But here's the challenge. Will you believe it before you see it? Will you stand in the middle of nothing and still believe everything is about to shift? Will you declare overflow while you're still surrounded by lack? Because that's the kind of faith that attracts us suddenly. That's the kind of posture that invites the all-at-once kind of blessing. Not entitlement, not desperation, but expectation. The kind that refuses to shrink just because time has passed. The kind that says, even if it hasn't happened yet, I still believe it can happen now. When it's God, it doesn't have to take years, and it doesn't have to come the way you imagined. One email, one encounter, one act of obedience. That's all it takes to step from nothing into more than enough. From waiting to walking in it. From God, when, to God, how did you do this so fast? That's the beauty of a sudden move. It doesn't ask for your permission. It just demands your preparation. And the people who are ready, really ready, they're the ones who will recognize it when it comes. That's why it matters how you wait. Not just that you wait, but how you wait. Because if you're not careful, disappointment will rob your discernment. You'll stop believing. You'll stop preparing. You'll stop stretching. And then when it comes, you won't even see it. You'll be so busy looking for crumbs that you'll miss the feast. But I came to stir your faith today, to remind you that he's still the God who can do in a moment what should have taken a lifetime. Still the God who can open doors no man can shut. Still the God who can bring it all together, not bit by bit, but all at once. Faith in the waiting is not just a passive kind of hope. It's an active, gritty, sometimes tear-stained kind of belief that stands even when nothing looks like it's working. It's easy to believe when things are moving, when doors are opening, when the bank account is full, when opportunities keep showing up. But what about when it's quiet? What about when you're doing everything you know to do, praying, worshiping, serving, giving, and still there's no evidence of change? That's the real battleground of faith. That's where overflow is born, not in the harvest, but in the holding on. We've all been there. That middle place, not where you used to be, but not yet where you're going. It's uncomfortable. It's confusing. You start questioning the vision God gave you because the current circumstances don't line up. The enemy loves that space. He loves to whisper in your ear, if God really said that, why hasn't it happened yet? He wants to convince you that the silence is proof that you missed it, that the wait is punishment, not preparation. But your faith in the waiting is not wasted. In fact, that's where God does his finest work. Not in the end result, but in the development process that builds you into the kind of person who can carry what you've been asking for. Faith is not magic. It's not a vending machine where you put in prayer and get out blessing. It's a lifestyle. It's a posture. It's a daily decision to show up when your emotions are screaming, quit. It's sowing seeds when the ground still looks barren. Because real faith doesn't need proof. It becomes the proof. Your persistence, your obedience, your quiet trust. Those are declarations louder than any shout. They say, I believe God is good even when I don't see the good yet. And that's the kind of faith that heaven responds to. You might be waiting for an overflow of answers, of resources, of opportunity. But what if God is waiting for an overflow of trust? What if the blessing you're waiting on is waiting on the faith you haven't fully released? Because God doesn't just look at what you say, He looks at what you're willing to surrender. And that surrender doesn't just happen once, it happens every day in the waiting. Every day you choose to stay faithful when no one's watching. Every day you choose to pray even though the situation hasn't changed. That is the kind of faith that builds capacity. See, we think overflow is about external abundance, but it starts internally. You can't hold overflow if your character leaks. You can't carry promise if your faith is fragile. So God uses the waiting to reinforce the foundation, to teach you how to trust Him for who He is, not just what He does. That way, when the breakthrough comes, it doesn't become your identity. It becomes your testimony, because your identity was already secure in the waiting. Your strength wasn't born when the blessing arrived. It was forged in the silence, in the questions, in the lonely nights. You kept showing up anyway, and we forget that. Even in the Bible, the people we celebrate were shaped in the waiting. David was anointed king, but went back to the field. Joseph had dreams of leadership, but was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned. Abraham was promised a son and waited decades. Waiting is not punishment. It's part of the promise. Because in the waiting, you learn that God's presence is enough. You learn to lean on Him, not the outcome. You discover that He is faithful, not just when He gives you what you want, but when He holds back what you're not ready for yet. Your faith in the waiting is what turns delay into destiny. That faith creates space for God to move, for your spirit to grow, for your character to mature. Your faith in Him. The beautiful thing is, even when you feel like your faith is barely hanging on, God is still working with that. He never asked you for perfect faith. He asked for mustard seed faith. Just enough to say, I'll show up again today. I'll believe again today. And with that kind of trust, mountains start moving. Even if they move slow at first. Even if they move beneath the surface where you can't see it yet. The shift is happening even if the signs haven't caught up. And there's something powerful that happens when your faith matures in the dark. You stop being driven by results and you start being rooted in relationship. You stop chasing answers and you start clinging to the answer. That's the shift. That's the growth. And that's what prepares you for overflow. Because when everything you've been believing for finally shows up, it's not going to come in pieces. It's going to come all at once. And when it does, you'll realize that the weight of it would have crushed the old version of you. But the waiting made you stronger. The waiting made you ready. God is more interested in building you than He is in impressing you. He's not here to put on a show. He's here to transform you. And transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the secret place, in the day-to-day decisions that no one applauds, in the moments where you choose faith over fear, obedience over comfort, trust over control. Those moments matter more than you know. They are laying the groundwork for something far bigger than what you're waiting on. So don't mistake the stillness for stagnation. Don't let the slowness of your situation fool you into thinking God isn't moving. Sometimes the loudest moves of God are made in the quietest moments of your life. When you're sitting in your car crying, wondering if you should keep going. When you're laying in bed at night asking God for a sign. When you're scrolling past everyone else's blessings, wondering why you're still waiting. Even in those moments, especially in those moments, God is near. He sees your heart. He hears your cry. And he's storing every act of faith like a seed in the ground, preparing for the day when the rain finally comes. And when the rain comes, it won't just water one seed, it'll water all of them. Every prayer, every sacrifice, every tear, every act of obedience you thought no one noticed. Heaven keeps perfect records. Nothing is wasted, nothing is missed. And when the release happens, it'll happen in such a way that you'll look back and say, oh, that's why it took so long. That's why the door didn't open earlier. That's why it had to happen this way. Because the overflow isn't just a flood of blessing, it's a flood of understanding. God brings clarity in the harvest that wasn't visible in the planting season. Faith in the waiting is more than survival, it's positioning. Every time you trust, you're positioning yourself under an open heaven. Every time you praise through the pain, you're pulling heaven into your atmosphere. Every time you believe when there's no visible reason to, you're enlarging the space inside you to receive what's coming. Because the blessing is not just coming to you, it's coming through you. And when it comes, it's going to impact more than just your life. It's going to ripple out. It's going to overflow into your family, your community, your generation. But if you abandon your post now, if you let go now, you won't just miss the blessing, you'll miss the becoming. And that's the part God values most. He's not trying to impress you with his power, he's trying to form you with his presence. And the waiting is where you learn to recognize that presence without needing proof. That's where deep, unshakable trust is formed. Trust that says, even if I never get the thing, I'll still follow you. Trust that says, even if the outcome changes, my faith won't. That kind of faith, that kind of unrelenting trust, that's what invites overflow. Not just any overflow, but the kind that's rooted, sustainable, purposeful. The kind that doesn't just bless you, but positions you to bless others. The kind that doesn't just lift your life, but launches your legacy. And it all begins not with results, but with belief. Quiet, steady, resilient belief. Belief that grows in the dry places. Belief that doesn't give up. Belief that waits not just with hope, but with confidence. Because it knows that every second of waiting is filled with intentionality. Every pause has purpose. And when it's time, everything you've waited for will not just appear, it will overflow.